Battlefield 6 feels like it was made by people who learned what made Battlefield so great, but never actually experienced it. I will explain what I mean, but first I need to make a huge disclaimer. Do not assume what I'm going to say in this video. I get it, you read the title and you're wondering if this is going to be like some mindless hate video against something just because it is popular. And I promise you it is not. Not only am I going to substantiate everything I say with examples, but also I have been a long time Battlefield fan and I want to see Battlefield 6 succeed. I mean, I bought the game. Why wouldn't I want my $70 to be well spent? And so before I get into the meat, the real juicy innards of what Battlefield 6 is missing, I want to give a little bit about my background so we are all on the same page. I primarily play military simulators. However, I also enjoy more casual games like Battlefield. And if you're new to my channel, when I say casual, that is not meant to be some sort of insult or backhanded comment. There is nothing wrong with a game being casual. Just to be clear, Battlefield Bad Company was my first ever Battlefield game. I remember my twin brother Tommy and I sitting on our cousin's couch playing it on the Xbox 360 back when we were little kids, and I thought it was awesome, leading us to grind out Battlefield Bad Company 2, Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, Battlefield 1, and also Battlefield Play for free. I'm not joking, by the way, that was the actual game. And yes, I remember watching each new episode of Battlefield Friends. And yes, I was there when the USAS with frag rounds was capable of taking out the Earth. And so please, don't hit me with the, oh, you don't like Battlefield because you're not an OG Battlefield player, or you're not a real Battlefield fan because you didn't shove a cluster of fireworks up your ass on launch day. And so with that being said, let's start out with the first glaring issue. Vision. In Battlefield 4 on the map Siege of Shanghai, if you destroyed the supporting pillars of the central skyscraper, the entire thing would collapse, leaving a rubble field to fight in alongside the rest of the map being covered in smoke and ash, changing up the dynamics of how the rest of the game would play out. It was one of the craziest spectacles in gaming, and it blew my mind back in 2013. Was it perfect? No. Did my PC crash a few times? Perhaps. Did people complain that the rubble wasn't as fun to fight in compared to the skyscraper? Sure. But you know what? Battlefield 4 had a vision. Sure, not all the maps had Levolution as insane as the one in Siege of Shanghai, but at least the maps tried something. When Battlefield 1 came around, Levolution was put more on the back burner, shall we say. But instead it was replaced with behemoths alongside operations, where there was essentially a multiplayer campaign mode with epic music and historical narration that made you feel like you were a part of something bigger, like a dramatized historical spectacle. And so let me ask you, what does Battlefield 6 attempt to do? I'm not saying that it needs Levolution or operations, albeit that would still be cool. What does Battlefield 6 offer that makes it the next step in the Battlefield franchise? From what I've seen, Battlefield 6 is a relief to many, not because it does or try anything new, but because the previous few titles were so terrible that people are just happy that Battlefield 6 is at least trying to go back to what made it so great. And that lies in the core issue. Battlefield 6 doesn't have a soul or vision. It doesn't have anything new to add to the franchise other than bringing a safe interpretation of the Battlefield franchise into 2025. Now, that doesn't mean Battlefield 6 isn't fun. That might sound surprising given all that I have said so far, but you can have a game be soulless yet still entertaining, like Angry Birds Reloaded. It is just that when a game doesn't really try to take on any new identity and what features or additions it wants to be known for or try to be known for, the game ends up bland. And so getting back to what I was saying in the start of the video, it seems like Battlefield 6 was made by people who never actually played the classics. Let me give an example, right? Rush is a game mode where one side is defending two bombs from being armed and detonated while the other side is trying to arm and blow up the bomb. Pretty straightforward game mode and a classic in Battlefield. But what made the game mode so fun wasn't just the game mode itself. There's plenty of games out there with defuse and armed game modes, right? It was the dynamics of the game mode that made it so interesting. Rush maps in Battlefield, or at least they used to, usually had some sort of cool twist to them. For example, on Damavand Peak in Battlefield 3, once you finish exploding the bombs on the cliff, your next bomb site required you to base jump off that same cliff and fight in the next objective. Do you know how cool it was seeing 32 players all base jumping and parachuting at the same time to fight the enemy? In Bad Company 2, which is in my opinion the best Battlefield for Rush, you would have a similar dynamic. dynamic where each sector had its own unique gameplay element, and I'm sorry I can't include any gameplay because all the servers are dead, but each server was strategically designed so that it felt like every building, every tree, every wall had a purpose. Each sector didn't feel like a conquest map that was lazily placed with borders and some bombs sprinkled in. In Operation Metro, you started outside and then slowly fought your way throughout the entire, well, Metro, and it was insane in the best way possible. 32v32 in close quarters choke points. You would spend literally 20 minutes straight chucking grenades down corridors, launching grenades through subway windows, spam reviving your teammates while trying to flank the enemy, and occasionally there would be a break in the lines and then the entire team would surge forward and try to break out in their own little fights, right? There'd be frenzies, there'd be smoke grenades, some machine guns, knives. It was insane and it was amazing. Was it balanced? No. But was it fun? Hell yeah! This is the sort of gameplay that was so popular that Operation Locker came out for Battlefield 4, which had similar gameplay dynamics. And sure, playing 32v32, Operation Locker or Metro, the meat blender would get stale after a while. But the good news is that there was a great mix of maps that had more balance, dynamic gameplay, alongside the meat grinder experience, meaning that you could choose what kind of rush experience you wanted. But here's the twist. If you weren't actually there to experience Operation Metro and Locker in its prime, the gameplay would look terrible to you. You might be asking, wait, so you have two teams stuck in a choke point launching grenades at each other almost the entire game. That doesn't sound fun. And that's how you ended up with Rush in Battlefield 6, which is 12v12. Yes, there are custom servers with more players, but those servers are either no XP or they're dead or just, there's something wrong. I'm talking about the base game. And the maps aren't bad for Battlefield 6 Rush. They're just forgettable. Quick interjection here. I know someone is going to say that Breakthrough is supposed to be the replacement for Rush. Is it? Breakthrough is a straight up downgrade from Battlefield 1 Operations. In fact, if you don't agree with me, name me one notable, keyword on notable, thing that Breakthrough does better than Battlefield 1 Operations. The reason why Battlefield 1 got a pass for not having such a good rush mode is because it was really obvious, both thematically and by just looking at the amount of effort that went into Operations, that this was supposed to be at least the temporary replacement for Rush. In Battlefield 6, we get Breakthrough, which plays like a crazy watered down version of Operations, to the point where I don't even know if this is supposed to be the replacement for the classic game mode of Rush, where in Battlefield 1 you're screaming, come on man, on to the next point, everyone is charging forward to the next sector, the music is swelling to a crescendo and you see 32 players all surge forward launching grenades and doing a big charge. In Battlefield 6 you're just kind of like, oh, I guess we exploded the bomb. Well, on to the next objective, which is usually just a generic arena with no twists and turns. Again, it's not a bad experience. I'm not saying it's not fun either. It just lacks the soul and vision of the classics. A theme, shall we say. Speaking of soul and vision, what happened to the charm of these games? I distinctly remember Marine Corps cadences being played during loading screens that hyped you up. I remember the collages of ribbons and fun little chimes and noises that played when you got a kill or earned some kind of medal. Battlefield 6 has generic hit markers and a splash of color when you kill someone, which I'm not going to say it's not satisfying, but it doesn't have the same personality of the classics. And to be fair, ever since Battlefield 1, or some might argue even Battlefield 4, this has been a problem with kill icons and stuff not being as satisfying. Regardless, what happened to the theme, the color, the little unique stuff that made Battlefield Battlefield? But going back on the topic of maps, most maps and their sections in Battlefield 6 just feel generic and too coincidental. I'm actually not sure what term to use here. Sort of like, the best way I can put it is, if you ever played a single player game where you get to a section and then you see a bunch of convenient shoulder high walls that you instantly know there's a fight coming up. That's sort of like what Battlefield 6 maps feel like. Part of the fun of Battlefield games is not that everything is laid out like a Valorant map or competitive shooter arena. While I'm not saying to have a map design where one team is spawned to Tai Lung's prison, it's okay for Battlefield maps to be designed with more of a homage to real settings than an arena shooter. For example, in Siege of Shanghai, there is a section where you can get on the roof and shoot down these skylights. If you were on top, it was sure, a little bit of an awkward angle, but if you were down below, you were pretty much guaranteed to die. So the next time the person who died will hide out in the adjacent rooms and change up their gameplay, as well as try to fight for control of these skylights. Or how about the elevators in Siege of Shanghai? Remember taking the elevator up to be met with a grenade dancing festival and the modern reenactment of Normandy Beach? Hell no, it wasn't balanced, but it was fun as fuck. And no, Siege of Shanghai is far from a perfect map, but I use it as an example because most long-time Battlefield players have experienced the map before. Also, do you remember the Parasol Islands in Battlefield 4, where the theme was trying to get people to fight in boats? And yeah, it didn't always work out, but again, at least the map tried something. At least Battlefield 4 tried something. And also, there was the whole entire naval thing that's pretty much been scrapped. And so when you compare Battlefield 6 to Battlefield 3, 4, 1, and Bad Company 2, and yes, there are obviously great Battlefield games other than those, but I'll just narrow it down to these 4 titles, which are also what people consider to be the classics. What does Battlefield 6 do better? Or more specifically, what does Battlefield 6 try to do better? Battlefield 6 doesn't have Levolution like Battlefield 4. No worries, not every game needs to have the exact same features as the previous, but what does Battlefield 6 replace Levolution with? Battlefield 6 doesn't have the same destruction as Bad Company 2. In Bad Company 2, if you shot a grenade launcher at a wall, there would be a hole literally where that grenade launcher landed. In Battlefield 6, you shoot a wall twice and the entire thing collapses. So Battlefield 6 destruction is literally a downgrade from Bad Company 2. Bad Company 2 is a game that came out like 15 years ago, by the way. So it doesn't have the same destruction as Bad Company 2. So what else does it have? Does it have the same charm and flair and little chimes as the classics? I love the little blue text popping up in Battlefield 3 alongside the ribbons. I love the little jingle that Bad Company 2 Kills gave, and I'm sorry if I can't find an example as I'm showing this because no one plays anymore, unfortunately. What does Battlefield 6 do differently? What does it replace the previous features with? What does it add? Battlefield 6 doesn't have the same epic feel as Battlefield 1, nor does it have the operations that make multiplayer games feel like you're a part of history and something larger, nor does it honestly just look as good as Battlefield 1. And so what does Battlefield 6 replace these very solid and beloved features of Battlefield 1 with? I don't know, you tell me. If Battlefield 6 is your first ever Battlefield game, I hope you have fun, and you should have fun. It is hilarious flying up to enemy tanks with C4 cars, or collapsing the roof of buildings enemies are hiding in, or landing 800-meter headshots, or shooting RPGs after jumping out of a jet. But for anyone else who's been a longtime Battlefield fan, none of this is new. You can do this in pretty much every single previous Battlefield title that I can think of. And I'm only saying I think because I haven't played every single Battlefield game out there. And while at the end of the day, I'm just speaking for myself here, I seriously don't see how Battlefield 6 innovates or does anything special. Post-edit Ratmith here, I almost forgot to talk about the open classes, which literally takes away a core element of Battlefield games. Open classes being that every class can use every gun. The entire point of guns being restricted to classes is that it forces you to get good. It forces you to adapt, and each class has their own strengths and weaknesses. You want to use an assault rifle? Tough luck if you're an engineer, figure it out. This is also what I mean by the people making Battlefield 6 not understanding Battlefield. While this is a guess, obviously I don't work for the development team, I am assuming that someone said, hey, restricting weapons to each class might turn away more casual players, so let's just get rid of this core mechanic so players don't actually have to learn each class. Anyways, back to the video. And so as a Battlefield fan, the relief is in the fact that it seems like Battlefield 6 wants to go back to more of its roots. The disappointing aspect is that it does so in a pretty bland and forgettable way, and even then it really isn't reminiscent of the classics with its open classes and increasingly frenetic movement speeds. I mean, if you're a longtime Battlefield fan, do you feel like Battlefield 6 is better than Battlefield 3 or 4 or 1 or Bad Company 2? But this is not a hate video. Battlefield 6 wants to be a live service game, and for all I know, a year from now, Battlefield 6 may be just as amazing, if not better, than the classics. Keep in mind, this is still early in the life cycle of Battlefield 6, but my fear is that the team behind Battlefield 6 doesn't actually understand what made Battlefield so fun, and starts to instead swing the pendulum towards Battle Royale and trying to be Warzone 2.0 rather than an upgrade on the classics. And so, to be blunt here, more than I have haven't already. I know this video probably ruined any chance of a sponsorship from Battlefield, but I am also not going to lie or compromise what I believe in. I am also not saying that people who say Battlefield 6 is the next best thing are lying either. Everyone is entitled to their opinion, and this is just mine. And so for me, I think Battlefield 6 is fun. It has potential, but as of now, it is just a bland addition to the Battlefield franchise that tries to capture the spark and essence of the classics with none of the vision and soul. At least for now. Let's see where this game ends up in a year, and I do hope it succeeds. Thank you for watching, and I'm also on vacation right now for the next month and a half. I have videos scheduled, but just so you know, I won't be as active in the comment section, and I do apologize for that. Like and subscribe for more, and more importantly, have a nice day.